Before we begin tonight's story, I want to take a moment to thank the author, Lady of Hell, for giving me the opportunity to share this story with you. You can find a link to her stories on Reddit in the description down below. Well, let's begin. The Midnight Train, Part 1. It was my mistake. I am a terribly anxious person, and usually I double check if I've boarded the right train, triple check sometimes, and check once again right after the departure. But not this time. In my defense, it was very late. I had been working a late shift at my new job, had gotten lost in the streets of a town I didn't know yet, and when I finally arrived at the train station to take the train home, it was almost midnight. There was nobody around, which didn't concern me because it was a Monday and very late, and nobody in their right mind would have been outside now, especially considering the heavy rain that had started to pour half an hour ago. The thick raindrops were banging on the metal roof, and the sound was almost deafening. I threw the water-soaked hood of my jacket back and hurried over to the ticket machine to pay for the ride. Like I said, the darkness and the rain made everything look a little foreign, and my eyes were burning from staring at computer screens for hours. Usually I check if I'm at the right platform. This time I simply went to the platforms 3 and 4, turned to the train that was already waiting, and got on. I did this because my train was to depart in 3 minutes, and I didn't want to wait a full hour until the next one because I missed it. Train stations at night were creepy, especially for a 21-year-old woman with no knowledge of self-defense. I crossed the threshold and was immediately confused by the seemingly antique interior of the train. It was certainly weird, but on the other hand, that didn't have to mean anything. Maybe they always use old trains for the late rides of the day. Whatever it was, I didn't get a chance to think about it as I was approached by the conductor. He wore an old-fashioned royal blue uniform, and that was the only thing I could remember about his appearance. He had a common face, I guess, ridiculously ordinary. "Welcome, ma'am," he greeted me. Old-fashioned, I thought again, but nobody called me ma'am usually. Still, I smiled tiredly at him and greeted him as well. The door shut right behind me. "Would you follow me, please?" the conductor asked. I nodded, a little confused, but not worried yet. He led me down a row of compartments without any visible windows, while the train departed from the station and quickly gained a lot of speed. It would have been perfectly fine for me to just wait beside the door because the drive would only take about 10 minutes, but I didn't want to offend the conductor. "Do you want to check my ticket?" I asked him, as I was already pulling said ticket out of my jacket, where I had hastily stored it. "Only as you leave, ma'am." Now that was weird. I traveled by train every day, and the conductors checked the tickets either immediately or came by after a few minutes, but they never specifically checked the ticket when leaving. Something about this guy was a little strange. I began to feel a little uncomfortable in his presence and clutched the backpack in my hands a little tighter, just in case I had to hit him with it for whatever reason. "Compartment number 3 for you, ma'am," the conductor stated and held the door open for me. I walked in and caught a glimpse of our reflections in the window opposite the door. I looked normal, soaked from rain, but normal. The conductor looked almost human. Almost. Except for the sunken eyes glowing red in pitch black sockets. An impossibly wide smile split his face and bared shark-like teeth, and his skin was dark and leathery and stretched tight around his skull. I screamed for some impossible reason. I didn't freeze at the horrifying sight, but spun around and held my backpack in front of my body like it could shield me from the monster. But the man in front of me wore his ordinary human face again. "Something the matter, ma'am?" he asked, and made a step to the side, so as I glanced behind me to check the reflection once again, I could only see myself, my pale, trembling, reflected self. "It's fine," I told him, but it didn't sound convincing. I just wanted that man out of my sight, preferably leave this train immediately and never think about it again. "Very well," the creepy conductor said. "If I can help with anything, don't hesitate to ask." I will inform you ahead of time when we reach your chosen destination. I wanted to say that it should only take a few more minutes to reach my hometown, but I kept quiet. The quicker our conversation would be over, the better. I shifted uncomfortably, tried to reposition myself while looking over my shoulder a few times, but I couldn't manage to catch a glimpse of his reflection again. Maybe for the better. I'll leave you to yourself now, the conductor finally said. Have a pleasant journey, ma'am, and thank you for choosing the midnight train. I thanked him because my mom raised me to always be polite to people who only did their job. Did this include creepy men who may or may not be terrifying monsters? Maybe not, but I definitely didn't want this guy to be mad at me. As soon as he shut the door behind him, I fumbled my bag open and pulled my phone out. I remembered boarding the train right before midnight, and I wanted to check how much more time I had to spend here before finally being able to go home. My mind was wandering back to the horrifying reflection again and again, but I banished the thought. This had just been a trick of my tired mind, a strange twisting of an uneven reflection. What confused me more was the fact that apparently almost 10 minutes had passed since I boarded the train. We should have reached at least the first station by now. I walked over to the window and tried to look outside, but I was met with pitch black darkness. Not a speck of light was to be seen. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. I tried to come up with explanations. A power outage that for some reason didn't affect the train. The clock on my phone not working correctly. Nothing seemed to make sense. I held onto my phone to keep my hands from shaking and sat down on the bed. Because what else was I supposed to do than just wait? As I sat down, I heard paper crumbling beneath me. I hadn't noticed before, but a piece of paper lay on the bed, and I assumed it was just something another passenger had forgotten there, until I picked it up and started reading. Dear passenger, you may have noticed by now, but this train is rather unusual. If you hadn't noticed, you're lucky, but that can change at any minute. Take it from someone who had to learn the hard way. I have written down some rules for you, and I pray that I didn't leave too much out. It is vitally important for you to follow them closely. Feel free to edit and add to this list as much as you have to if necessary. I'd appreciate if you left this in the compartment before leaving so it can help the next unfortunate soul like it helps you. Good luck. 1. If you bought a ticket at the station, you'll arrive at your destination eventually. It might take some time, but you'll get there. If you didn't buy a ticket, I'm sorry. There's no way to leave now. Number 2. Be wary around other passengers. Some are just like you, some benevolent, and some outright malicious. It's hard to distinguish them. 3. Don't enter compartment number 18 no matter what you hear from inside. 4. The children want to play sometimes. Ignore them until they go away. Their games aren't meant for humans anymore. 5. The conductor is neither your friend nor your enemy. He merely does his job, so treat him with respect and don't stare at him for too long. It's impolite. 6. You may eat anything from the vending machines. You can go to the dining wagon if you want to, but be careful. If the waiter wears a red bow tie, don't touch the food. Fake an illness and excuse yourself. If the waiter has no face, run and hide in your compartment. If the waiter is a tall woman with white hair, cut your palm open with your knife and drop some blood on the plate. If she takes the plate with her, she is in your favor now. 7. If the light flickers once or twice, it's fine. If they flicker 3 times or more, leave the wagon immediately and alert the conductor. Make sure you leave before the lights go out. 8. There is a man in an old trench coat. He looks like a detective from a film noir. His appearance may scare you a bit, but you can trust him. He is on your side. 9. There is a woman in a white dress weeping on the balcony at the end of the train. I don't know why she's crying, and I don't know what could make her stop. She's not malicious, but she doesn't respond when talked to. Anyway, you're free to visit her. She won't hurt you. 10. The train occasionally grows larger or shorter. I hadn't figured out the reason, but don't worry if it takes longer than usual to reach your destination. 11. Throughout your journey, the train will stop at different places. You can go out and explore if you like. Just make sure you ask the conductor for the laws of the town. Don't hesitate to write them down if you have to. 12. Do not leave your compartment between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Do not open the door during that time. If you hear something clawing against the door, ignore it. If you hear someone begging to let them in, tell them firmly to go away. The hunters don't take kindly to those who steal their prey. 13. A blind beggar woman offers good advice, but never for free. Make sure you ask her for her price before accepting her help. 14. Sometimes you'll see blood flowing from a bathroom stall. The girl inside is already dead. Don't try to save her. 15. Your compartment belongs to you. If someone tells you they are your roommate for the journey, alert the conductor. Do not tell them your name. 16. Frozen carps may approach you. They don't mean you any harm, so talk to them for a while. They have been alone for a very long time. You may offer them food or drinks, but don't take anything they offer you. They don't have malicious intent, but what they own has been rotting with them. 17. Fire is feared by beasts and humans alike. 18. Stay away from the bald man with the pale blue eyes and the briefcase, but be polite if he approaches you. He's been here for a very long time. The train listens to his requests. This list seemed to be written by multiple people. For example, the three specific possibilities for the dining wagon were written in three different handwritings and different colors. Some things were written with care, others were hastily scribbled down like the writer had been in a hurry. I'm not the type of person to believe stuff like this. Even as a child, I had never been bothered by this chain mail. Send this to 10 people or you will die kind of stuff. But I had seen monsters' reflections in the window. The train was driving full speed for 15 minutes now without ever reaching the next station. I just couldn't bring myself to think of this as an elaborate prank. This was real, and I had to be honest. It scared the shit out of me. I fumbled the ticket out of my jacket to make sure I still had it. I had to be careful not to lose it, if not only to follow the first rule, but also because the monstrous conductor had promised to check my ticket before leaving the train, and I definitely didn't want to antagonize him. After making sure I still had it, I stored it away in the case of my cell phone where I considered it safe. Then I lay down on my bed. My heart was still racing. My whole body was trembling as I stared up at the ceiling. I knew I had to wait. What else was I supposed to do? I could barely jump out of a window of a train that moved with what felt like several hundred kilometers per hour into the darkness. I began to read the rules over and over again, trying to memorize each one. There was still a chance that none of them would be real, but if they were, I would rather be safe than sorry. It must have been about 1:30 in the morning when I heard it. Long, sharp claws digging into the wood of the door, scratching over and over again. I screamed as it happened the first time. The rules said to ignore it, but that was easier said than done. I sat up and pressed my body against the wall behind me. I tried to move as little as possible, but my breath grew shallow. I didn't dare make any sound. Do you remember when you were scared at night as a child? When you hid under your blanket and felt safe because you were sure whatever monster was lurking in the dark couldn't possibly hurt you as long as you had that blanket? That's exactly what I did. I pulled the blanket all the way up to my neck as if that thin piece of fabric could protect me from that thing that was clawing at my unlocked compartment door. As if a blanket would make any difference. I'm not religious, never have been, but in that moment, I prayed to God that I would survive this night. When the clawing stopped, I felt relief. The moment, however, was short lived because only a few minutes later there was knocking, heavy, desperate knocking. "Let me in," someone from the outside shouted. "Please let me in, they're going to kill me." I didn't trust my voice at the moment, but I knew what I had to do. Go away, I screamed back as expected. My voice was trembling. Please, the person outside seemed to be in pain. Please, they will hurt me. They will kill me. I couldn't take the risk. That's not my business, I answered. Mercy, please, he pleaded. It hurts so much. Please have mercy. Go away. He suddenly started screaming, simultaneously begging for mercy and crying in pain. There were vomit inducing wet sounds. Something was growling like a rabid dog. I bit my lip as I choked back another terrifying scream. Whatever was happening out there, and I think I had a good idea about that, made me freeze in fear. I barely dared to breathe at this point. And as the cries finally stopped, I watched in terror as the door of my compartment was slowly pushed open. I stumbled to my feet, preparing to run from whatever would enter, even though I knew I didn't really stand a chance. I stood in the middle of my compartment, wrapped in my blanket and shaking so hard I expected my legs to give in and just collapse on the floor. What entered was a man dressed in a bloody hunter's garb. His face and most of his skin was hidden behind the leather, and I didn't allow myself to look too closely at the pale eyes and his strange looking hands because I was afraid of what I might see. You assisted my hunt tonight, he said with a husky voice that hadn't been used for a long time. I nodded because I was still crying and didn't feel able to talk. I shall assist yours as the time comes, the hunter now proclaimed. He put his fist over his heart and bowed. I mimicked the gesture because mostly I didn't know what else to do. The hunter nodded and left, pulling the door shut behind him and leaving me alone once again. That's when I finally collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. All of that happened about 5 hours ago. I obviously haven't slept, but it has taken me a while to calm down and decide how to proceed. I don't have much of a choice, of course, but still, I'll have to wait for the train to reach my destination, and until that, I'll make sure to follow the rules. I memorized them all, but I will still carry the list around just in case I need to check something. It's 6 a.m. and the sun is rising now, but the outside is still a blur. Phone reception and internet seem to work just fine, which is good. I called work and told them I developed a fever and that I'll have to stay home for a while, so that's taken care of. I will keep you guys updated on what's happening here. For now, I guess I'll leave my compartment to get myself some food from the vending machines, of course. No need to risk the dining wagon. After that, I'll just see what happens. I certainly hope the train takes me home soon, although I don't have very high hopes.